How you guys doing? Is the sound okay and the video all right? Joseph and Lease Time and Javi and Dominic and Big Sal and Pepsi C. How you guys doing? Thanks, Big Sal. A lot of things I don't get to know that. Hi, Neff. Oh, I got on my Dandy Arty. Let's see, what is it? It's a Dandy Arty open face. This is I think this was an orphan by the time they released it. And it's become one of my favorite watches. There's nothing about this that I would recommend somebody says, I want a good everyday watch. And this wouldn't be it. I mean, it keeps great time and it's fun to have. And I like to watch that little wheel roll seamlessly, but it's a pain in the neck to wind. It's even I mean it's really very difficult to set, but it's a favorite watch. I'm not surprised it became an overnight orphan. they they made one set of these, I think, and they gave it up. They still Chaumet's still making watches, but they're very straightforward, simple watches. So anyway, I'm wearing it in part because I wanted to talk about orphans and when they become vintage and other kinds of things that are going on. Hi, Rich Rancher. How you doing, man? Not to be confused with artsy fartsy. No, that artsy fartsy is part of your collection, and I would never take that away from you, Rancher. Okay, guys. What I There was a number of watches that I was looking at my collection. I think most of them are orphans. Uh, some were when I bought them, and as a result, I got a really good price on them. And other ones sort of became unpopular once I bought them, which some kind of relationship there. Um, but I've always wondered about that. One of the more interesting ones that became an orphan and a vintage, and then it was came back again, and then it was gone again. And this is the Rolex Prince. I think it was the Rolex Prince was, I think it's all back in the 1920s or 1930s, sometime like that. It was a long time ago where they had the original Rolex Prince, and then they came back with one. I think it was around 2004. I think I'm not positive, and so they had it around for a while. And I think the second one was even better. What a great watch. Well, now it's gone again. That didn't last very long. Um, some other orphans that were sort of short-lived is another one of my favorite. Naturally, is the Quadrille by Vacheron Constantin. In 2016, when they brought out the new overseas, one with the 5100 movement in it, they also came out with one in stainless steel called the Quadrille, and it was about $4,000 or $5,000 cheaper than the overseas, and it wasn't popular. I think it's a great watch. It's exactly the same as the overseas, except well, for a lot of things, it's got a hand date and a few other things like that. And it looks different. It's got the same movement though. A different rotor. It's got a ruthium or something like that kind of rotor. And that thing was again didn't last long before it became an orphan. And but there's nothing about it that suggests it's vintage. On the other hand, the Prince isn't very old. I mean, it hasn't been gone very long, but I think a lot of people consider it to be, well, that's a vintage watch, and I don't see it that way. But anyway, so what's on your mind? You guys got any orphans? Um, I think this is a maybe orphan. Um, this this is a Urban Jorgensen, and this Urban Jorgensen I got uh, when Urban Jorgensen sort of more or less shut down and was sold over to a group led by Kari Alhutalanen. And so it was like it was sort of almost an orphan when I got it, but it was such a good price that I couldn't pass it up. And I think Rancher got one too, but he got a different one. He got a really nice one. He wouldn't want a platinum one with a little higher deal. But I don't know whether these will be considered orphans or they're sort of first generation urban Jurgenses. I have no idea. And so you see, beginning to see some of these. My H. Moser double hairspring. When I got it, I think it was an orphan already, and the in fact I'd written to H. Moser and said, "Well, how come they quit making them?" And they said they're just too expensive to make, and which delighted me because I got a good buy on it. But um, there's not a sense of vintageness to it. So anyway, uh, wanted to get your thoughts about this. First of all, let me ask you if you have any orphans, and by orphans I simply mean ones they quit making. One of the interesting sort of two-tier orphans are by Patek Philippe, and this is their gondola line. They got rid of that. It wasn't too long ago, just a few years ago. All of a sudden, there were no more gondolas. There may be some women's ones that they had left over, something like that. That happens sometimes. I know that it happened with the Vacheron Constantin in 1972. It's another set of orphans. Um, but the the reason that I got them was that they were good watches and you could get them at great discounts. That was then not true anymore. But it was sort of a way to get an affordable watch as far as that was my big motivation. Both of my H Mosers were that way. My I don't think my Parmigiani hemispheres was an orphan when I got it. It is now because they sort of went in a different direction. But let me ask you guys about that. How do you feel about orphan watches? I mean, I don't know what the deal is on parts and things. I sent my Culpa in for service and had no problem at all. And it again, that's another one of the orphans. I'm into vintage. How much time you got? Okay, yeah, I know. I'm the one that ought to be into vintage. Um, I've got a few vintage. I'm just they're not the same. I don't know when a watch becomes a vintage. I somebody put 20 years on it, but somebody has a. There are a lot of watches that like I think you can get a Royal Oak. One of the standard Royal Oaks, and the ones they're still making like they made the original pretty close to that. That thing's well over 20 years, and I don't think it's going to be considered a vintage for quite a while. My Trebus, isn't that Trebus pretty new, or am I mistaken? 70% of my Trebus TR3s. Okay. Um, what other? I mean, there's uh, probably most of my 736 collection, the ones with the Jacques 736 movement, are are now orphans. They were a lot of them were when I got them. Um, Hi Abdul, I think they are definitely one of the best watch categories to collect, and if a watch I buy becomes one, then it might be a future classic. Yeah, I think there's why a watch becomes an orphan in the first place. And again, I'm this is speculation, is because they're not making money from them. They're not selling them. If you take a look at, and again, I don't want to insult anybody who's a Rolex owner or buyer, but if you look at the Prince, it doesn't look a thing like your typical Rolex. It doesn't have an oyster case. It's got a case back you can see through. It's hand wound. It's not automatic. Um, I think they come in both uh, leather or gator bracelets. I mean, bands. And I guess, and bracelets too. Whereas every other Rolex comes with a bracelet. And so here you have something that's really different. Another line that is sort of seems to be on the way to extinction, orphanage from Rolex are the Cellini lines. You used to go and you look at the Rolex site and they had all these different Cellinis, and now I think they're down to about one. Um, it's I can see that too. I can understand why. I mean, Cellini is a dress watch, and there's probably no better consistent line of sport watches than Rolex. Um, I mean, in terms of one thing I think about a sports watch is that they really, go swimming and stuff like that, and do other things with it that are more active, and with a solid case back that you can't see the movement, you've got less likely to spring a leak. The Golden Lips, an orphan yet. I boy, I still get the Patek Philippe magazine, and they had a wonderful article some time ago on the golden ellipse. And the thing I liked about the golden ellipse, the golden part, was it turns out that they're talking about the golden ratio. This thing is 1 to 1.61, something like that, that kind of ratio. And I know that Parmigiani used that a lot in their watches. You have to know where to look, but they used them. It was used a lot in the Vacheron Content 10, 1972. They had a bunch of those things in there. Um, so it's like, I don't know. I've got, what's popular. I don't care whether something is popular or not. And by that I mean, if something's popular, I might like it and I like it as much as everyone else. But I don't depend on that. And because I don't depend on it, I think it's, sort of opens it up for a lot more things. I was looking at there's a bunch of talk about, oh, the trends of the watch prices are going down. And they had a little picture of a curve going on. And the thing of it is they only use certain watches as indexes, Rolex naturally, and some of the other ones, and they showed that I think it was Rolex still haven't started to go down yet, but some of the other ones have. Omega, I think that was one of the ones that did. And so, I mean, on the whole price thing, I doesn't do much. I can, one way or the other, as far as I'm concerned. But the value, the horological value, I better shut this guy up. He's sitting right next to my microphone. And every time something comes in, hang on, I'll turn on the old focus on. There we go. That'll quiet it down. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Koji. Uh, Ironically, the Cellini line is the only Rolex line that appeals to me. Koji, to me that's not ironic in the sense that somebody has. I don't mean it. It sounds terrible when I say it this way. Just because somebody has good taste doesn't mean they're wrong. Um, I don't know. I could bringing down the wrath of Rolex on my head. I don't mean to do that. I don't criticize the other ones because there really are. There are too many that I like, but things I like better. Okay, what do you got here? Hi, John. How you doing? Wearing my Rolex Datejust uh, Thunderbird this AM. Oh, that's cool, John. I didn't mean to insult you. Thunderbird. What is the? I don't know that watch. The Thunderbird. Um, I like my Corona shirt. Yeah, the old my Corona shirt. This is a vintage. I got this. Somebody sent it to me. Really, I had oh boy, a vintage Corona shirt. Remind me of my days flying down to Baja. Had some good times. Corona was responsible for irresponsible behavior too. Um, oh, let's see. The rancher. Hi, Macolo Time. How you doing? Um, anyway, so I think one thing that like I was talking about is that if you look at your watches, if how many of you sort of there's certain watches I think that are going to be around forever. I mean, certain models. The Royal Oak, I think, is one. I don't know how much they updated the some of the other ones and others that you'd never expect them to get rid of. Didn't Patek Philippe recently get rid of the Nautilus? And now they're going whole hog with whatever that other one was that they're going to have instead of the Nautilus. What was the name of it? One of their diver watches. Why in the world would they get rid of Nautilus? I don't understand that. The Thunderbird was named after Thunderbird's Air Force. Ah, thanks, John. There's a Vacheron Constantin Thunderbird too. One of the you talk about it, that's sort of a oldie but goodie. It's not too old. I think it's from like the 80s and 90s maybe. But that was another Thunderbird. I didn't know about the Rolex Thunderbird. One of the things I always liked Rolex Domino Pizza. There was something about that had an interesting history. What do I know? Hi, Tuna. How you doing? Paddock, the Nautilus 3. Ah, okay. Nautilus 3 times already. Oh, they discontinued. Thanks, Neff. Something else that happens, and this happened, another one with Paddock Philippe, they had this really nice um, regulator. Forgot the name of the whole thing was, but it was a regulator. Really liked the regulator, and they got rid of it, and then they brought it back again. So like the I didn't realize the Nautilus had gone through. They have the other one, I guess, is the Aquanaut. The Aquanaut was sort of you know the Nautilus's little brother or sister. Another one that they had is called the Neptune. Patek Philippe Neptune, a neat watch. We have it's like 95% humidity today. This is like up where we are. We're not used to the high humidity, and so everyone is sort of getting ringed out. But the temperature's not so high. Um, let's see. Koji, certain brands like UG and Angulas could be considered orphans that I wish some rich CEO would adopt and restore. Yeah, that has happened to some. Was talking about the other day. Recently had a about the Patria. Patria was from back in 1890 something or other, and Eterna brought it back out. With an Eterna movement, which is really sort of a good thing. Um, yeah, that happens every now and then. Oh, take a look at Beauvais. Not only did Beauvais bring it back from the very, I don't think it got much better than what Beauvais was when Pascal Raffi brought it back again. And then he goes and he wins all of these Grand Prix awards with these really, really great watches he made, including the Aiguille d'Or. So, I mean, you can you can come back better than what you left it as. And I think one example would be Beauvais. And I think Beauvais is going to have a bunch of orphans pretty soon. When Raffi brought them back, they had a number of sports watches that I think had ETA movements in them, and I don't know if they still have those or not. Um, the Demier, then they had their own movement system and everything else. Also, too, if you look at H. Moser, before sort of the most recent or more recent ownership, they had these ones that were called H. Moser. God knows what they had for movements. And these are from, I think, from like the 90s or 80s. They had them. Then they came out with all of these really great watches and precision engineering and so forth. But I think they've also been sort of brought up again by uh, Edward Malin. So you have these models and different watches that come and go. And I'm trying to think, here's one of my 736s is in a I have to, it's called Philippe Dufour's at Fields. I don't know if they're still making these or not, but this had the movement in here is the 736. And so it's got the same movement as ones that are more modern, I mean, are like from 21st century watches. And so you have those as well. Hi, Dean. Um, Finally got your H. Moser Venture by date, and yeah, it is a nice watch. That is a super watch. I really like that. You know, they had, I think H. Moser had a dual time zone, and they got rid of it, and then they brought out this new one, and the new one is really great. I think that was the one that the Dean's talking about. Abdul just made a good point. The whole thing, a lot of these brands sort of disappeared after the quartz crisis, and some were bought up by companies like Swatch, and Swatch really saved them. A lot of people, wow, they're bought by Swatch and sort of got a reputation as cheap Swatch watches, but they're not. Other ones, God knows what they're doing these days. Hey, Johnny. Lots of Universal Geneve, which were zeros. Yeah, that's another thing. That's a good point, John. The Some of these really great watch designers and watchmakers. For example, I don't think I could ever think of a George Daniels as being other than a George Daniels. I mean, hey, you don't, or a Philippe Dufour. You said, well, that thing is, like the simplicity. They're making more. The only reason they quit having them is that Dufour got tired of making them, so that was retired instead. And there are ones like that, but this is there's certain things I think that for me anyway is a lot of fun to look for, and that's something sneaking in. Sometime uh, there was a either a video or an article put up on High Horology Lounge just sometime today, probably. I think it was from Europe, but it was a story about um, Philippe Dufour and his daughter Daniela. Now it's, and I probably said that wrong, but Daniela is sort of taking over from her father, and won't that be interesting? I mean, like if Daniela made watch came out, Daniela Defour came out, and I could get my mitts on one that I could afford, I'd probably go for it. Um, because I know that anything that she did was the tutoring was by her father, Philippe Dufour. So that to me that's another kind of thing. Speaking of watches that probably never will be an orphan because people want them so much. Hi, Artie, how you doing? The older watches, especially the shaped ones. However, just saw one for the Phillips auction. Saw quite a few vintage pieces going for higher prices. Round is the current favor. Round has always been the current favor, but yeah, the you go to auctions, all kinds of strange things happen there. One of the things I think we can learn from auctions from people who spend a lot of time at auctions is some really rare birds. Also, too, every now and then you can pick one off for a better price than you can buy, even on eBay, because no one's paying attention. I was able to get Daniel Roth that way. Was a good way to sell it. Also, ended up selling a Vacheron Constantin, was very much of an orphan, sort of a double orphan. Um, Oh, that's another kind of orphan you have. My first sports luxury watch was an overseas, and it was the first one they made. They referred to it as OS1. Well, that became an orphan in a way, not the model, but that particular style. And then they came out with a new one. Then in 2016, they came out with the one they have now. That I think is going to be around for quite a while. You can't buy them now because they're so popular. Um, it's really interesting. Um, yeah, Abdul, I agree. Something with a story and a history to it. Okay, Dominic, prices are going down. Dominic, are the European prices going down across the board, or are there just certain ones? I Some I've seen go down, but for the most part, that's the ones I want haven't. They will, I hope, though. Um, Ebel chronograph watches were men oriented, but now marketed into the women's fashion. Yeah, that's another thing. A lot of women, and I don't blame them. Um, for women, I tell you, you got to have X-ray vision to see. They got these little bitty dials on them, so you look feminine. Women who need to, tell the time at a glance and want a little style for it. I think the company that did the best job with that was Cartier with the Boulogne Blues. What is it called? The something something blue that they made, and it has a nice big dial on it, and you can. It's actually useful as opposed to those little bitty ones going like this, and like you have to take a micro. Recommended watching the interview watch with the TVD with his daughter. Yeah, that's the one. Hobby, that's the one that somebody posted on High Horology Lounge, and I think that's the one anyway. I just noticed it this morning. Um, oh, Coach, you don't talk about the Great Depression. My God, I think that for a lot of reasons, the economy seems to be really in big trouble, and I there's sort of a combination of all kinds of stuff happening right now. So, hang on to your hats or hang on to your berets. I bought several watches from auctions at a bargain price because no one wanted an unknown. I had one even unbranded from the School of Horology in Geneva for a bargain. Yeah, this, if you really look for things, this is I got this watch primarily because it had a module by Agenor in it, and it had something that they call the Agonese, which is this gear in it with these little springs so that you don't have any slippage. It's an incredible thing. And I'll sit and watch this thing, and there's no hesitation at all in the second hand. Here, that instead of a second hand, they have what looks like a Ferris wheel, just incredibly smooth. And that's what, to me anyway, is whether something is an orphan or not an orphan. And I don't go for vintage, but I got a couple, but it's just not something I do. I would go to the rancher for advice on something like that. He knows all about vintage. The size issue for explains the popularity of Daytonas. Women are buying Daytonas. Good grief! I That's interesting. I didn't know that. Um, I thought everybody wanted a Daytona. Because I'm not into chronographs. I'm not too interested. But women in a Daytona, so that's interesting. Um, oh, trying to think some other watches. Oh, I tell you, a watch company that I think has been struggling forever and they have really excellent watches. And they have wonderful watches. Most of their watches are for men, but they have some really wonderful women's watches. Is M- uh, Moritz Grossmann, the German watch company that Christine Hutter runs. And man, I tell you, she doesn't have any of those little bitty women's watches. I mean, her women's watches are, maybe 36 as the smallest, but they're generally main size. Rancher, that's right. The way you say agonase for the Gehrig is like the A's in mayonnaise. Very good. Put that on your toast. Um, the Bond clip bracelet is making a comeback. Uh, Check out Fostner. Okay. Couple guys got the Romain Jerome spacecraft recently. It was like a 2892 with an Agenor module. Ooh, I don't know what they paid, but I saw you missed that one. Me too, Nap. X. Oh, okay. I guess that means it's time to go. Oh, is it? Ah, rats. Yeah. Okay, guys. All right, Dominic. uh, Gotta run, guys. Anyway, thank you all for joining this morning. I liked your comments. And if you're around this afternoon at 4 o'clock New York time, see you again. Meantime, take care.